Austin Peay is celebrating one of the champions of our campus who has helped bring diversity and inclusion to the forefront. Joining me today is the Chair of Theater and Dance, Marcus Hayes. He is the first recipient of Austin Peay's 2023 Inclusion Award. Welcome to 91.9 Public Affairs and APSU-TV. I'm Micca Terrell. And Marcus, thank you so much for stopping by. So congratulations, wonderful news on the Inclusion Award. So explain to us, it was a unique time because we had the inaugural Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. breakfast, and then you received the award. What was that like, receiving that honor at such a special time?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. This is cool. To be able to talk about the award, it's been such an eye-opener for me. I did not see it coming. I don't approach work from the perspective of I want recognition. I feel like I'm recognized every month when I receive my paycheck. It's like that's what we do. And so it was very nice for other people to acknowledge my work on campus and over time. And at first, I didn't think that I was deserving of the award. I mean, it really caught me off guard because I think of many people on this campus who are also very deserving. And I was asked to write a bio for the ceremony. And it was through the act of writing the bio that I had to take a moment and say, oh, okay, I have done some good things for campus. I have done some things that maybe other people have not done. And then I just kind of had to say, I've got to learn how to take a compliment. So yeah, it's been a really humbling experience for me. I'm incredibly honored and just grateful for being recognized.
Right. I mean, you've had a variety of leadership roles too. And what have you learned through those leadership roles? Again, as dean, associate dean, you've had a leadership role with the Phi Kappa Phi. What are some of the lessons that you've carried, especially with COVID, that have learned and carried with you through your experience?
Sure. Leadership is one of those things that I think a lot of people think there's a formula for it, or, I see a lot of people who are interested in having a title, maybe without having done work that leads to the title. And so I never really cared about the title so much as doing the right thing for students, doing the right things for the department, doing the right things for the university. So I try to approach my leadership in that way. I try to be myself every day. I try to resolve problems in a way that feels right for me. And that I know works within the system of the university. But leadership, it's one of those things, like, I don't think of it as like leadership. I don't think of it in terms of like, I guess, some structural thing. I think of it more as doing the right thing, not being afraid to be the person who has to say no. Not being afraid to make tough decisions, because there are a lot of really tough decisions that have to be made. And I'm not afraid of that part of the job. I really also try to focus a lot on the good and the positive that's happening, and how do we continue to build the positive and not get caught up in the problems, because the problems will always be there. So leading through COVID it's one of those things, like, it taught me more about who I am. I have told many people I was the right person to be chair during COVID. It was so hard. It's still hard. There are parts of it that are still hard.
Right.
But having led through that experience that we were all suffering through, just taught me so much about empathy, taught me so much about listening, taught me so much about self-care, and that we have to take care of ourselves in order to help other people who are maybe suffering in different ways. Just so much compassion, all of these things that, I thought that I understood before COVID, that I have a different perspective on now. And really, I feel like I can do anything. Like, if there
you feel like a superhero?
Oh, not even like a superhero, but just like, that was probably the hardest thing that most of us will ever experience. So it's like, there are things that present themselves and they feel hard, but it won't be as hard as March 2020, will not be as hard as August 2020. figuring out like, how are we going to have classes through this pandemic, and people in our discipline in theater and dance, it's in person. You know, there are some things we can do online, but it's tough to have a dance technique class online. It's tough to have an acting class online when acting is about this. Like, you've got to be in person and the interaction.
Exactly, right.
So just learning how to problem solve in new ways, I feel like there's very little that I can't do in this lifetime because I survived that.
Right, your skill set has grown. I feel like a lot of us, particularly in the teaching, like you mentioned, performance-based teaching, how do you make that work? Because Zoom fatigue was real, and we all know, right? So so again, those skills that you have now, which you mentioned, a lot of the problem solving definitely is such a huge thing. And a thing too that we also saw in 2020, we saw a lot of new conversations about race that hadn't happened before.
Yes.
Particularly in the wake of what happened with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. And we saw the resurgence or re-emergence, if you will, of the African American Employee Council,
yes,
which was a huge deal. And you were a part of that, along with many stakeholders in the faculty and staff. Talk about how that, too, was a good thing that came out of the pandemic.
Sure. You know, we were all at home, watching television and seeing this kind of horrific death, this horrific murder on television, on our phones, on social media. And I personally was feeling very alone. And a few people on campus, we just started texting each other, like checking in. Are you doing okay? Mm-hmm. Like, we should get together and have a Zoom and talk about that part. And then it became, well, wait, we need to actually talk about this as a campus community, you know, not just within this group of people who, you know, we happen to have each other's cell phone numbers, but right, we need to actually build this out. And so we approached President White at the time, who was president, about holding some kind of town hall meeting, just to hold space for people to feel what they're feeling about this murder, and to then start to think about, well, what are we doing on campus to make sure that these things don't continue to happen? So we held that first town hall. It was widely attended. The Zoom, I can't remember how many people were on the initial town hall, but that sent a very clear message that, wait, we need to do something tangible to address these issues.
Definitely, and that was a great, and you mentioned the Zoom, and I saw someone had actually grabbed a screenshot capture of all the faces, and to see all of those friends and colleagues, and again, maybe some you didn't know, mm-hmm, to see everyone together and that all of those concerns coming together, yes, was really probably heartening to see, yes, that feeling of camaraderie, for sure.
So the African American Employee Council existed previously, and then, you know, I think it's just a function of people being busy and leadership changes over the years. It just kind of petered out. Mm-hmm. And this was a real reason to bring it back. So there was already a constitution in place. There was already a bylaw, a set of bylaws. There was already a bank account. So some of those things were already in place. So it was easy to just kind of like let's rally together and get this going again.
And it's been 3 years now, right?
Yes.
We've 3 years, and things. How are things going? What conversations do you think need to be had still to help us continue to address the issue of race and inclusion?
Sure. Well, there are a lot of things. So mm-hmm, even within the AAC, something that we've had to grapple with as an organization is the title, the name of it, right? So African American itself is its own group that can feel exclusive of Black people from the Caribbean, Black people from the African continent, Black people from Europe. So we are still in some ways grappling with that. There's been some language added to the mission of the organization, and even discussions around a name change, just so that it doesn't have that kind of exclusionary thread. So that's one thing that has certainly come out. There's more programming. I think that even having this breakfast, the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. breakfast, is a tangible thing that this university, we should be doing something as a university around that holiday. We have to come up with ways to show that this is something that we're all taking seriously, and that we can't allow to kind of fall to the wayside or fall off of the list of things to keep working towards and striving towards.
Definitely true. And it's been good to see the projects that you mentioned have come out of the reemergence of the council. Also, too, the projects to help educate the campus, such as the If Austin Peay Could Talk. That was one that really stood out to me. And hopefully we'll see more like that, where everyone gets to share an experience, to be able to be heard and seen and be listened to.
Yes.
It would be great.
We did the small discussion groups that came out of the diversity committee. So during COVID,
Right.
I was chair of the University Diversity Committee, which was also its own challenge. There's a lot of hidden work that belongs to the diversity committee, and so I was trying really hard to keep those things going. And interim president Whiteside, Donnell Whiteside, it was really her idea to create these small discussion groups based on something that she was a part of with the American Bar Association. So it was born out of that idea, and then we came up with Lenisa Williams, who's the chief diversity officer, created a curriculum. We started training people to lead those discussions, so to not be the expert, but to say, I'm going to take my group and we're going to keep these conversations going. So we kind of did a train the trainer style session to get people comfortable with having tough conversations. And then everyone who signed up and wanted to be assigned to a group was. And some of those groups are actually still meeting. They gelled, they bonded as a group, and they still get together and have lunch or, talk about things that are happening in their lives. So it was this great opportunity for people who maybe aren't engaging with the subject matter, around diversity, equity, inclusion. It gave them a space to ask questions, a space to talk about things that maybe they're too afraid to talk about in other settings, and a safe environment. So I'm very proud of that work that happened. And I am almost positive there's another group now called the Bridge Initiative. They are working to bring that model back in a different way. And so when they say bridge, they're really thinking about it like, you're on one side of this discussion, I'm on this side of this discussion. How do we build a bridge to each other?
Right, because we definitely need to keep doing that, keep that conversation up, for sure.
Absolutely. So that is something that is still ongoing. While being on Zoom, Lenisa Williams and we did a lot of kind of campus-wide discussions. We led a lot of workshops. We had a series called The People's Voice, Peay, The People's Voice. And so different people around campus wanted to bring some issues to the forefront. And so it gave them an opportunity to present, and people who signed up, faculty and staff, students who signed up to be a part of those sessions, got to learn from each other. That was another great initiative that the Zoom format, we took advantage of the Zoom format during COVID. And so instead of seeing it as a problem, it's like, how do we use this as a tool?
Right, and it was very, very helpful, for sure. Now, we've talked about a lot. What is something I haven't asked you about that you'd like to talk about?
Oh my gosh.
So much, right?
There's so much.
Let's as the chair of theater and dance, we obviously know there's a lot going on. What would you like to share about anything coming up event-wise that folks can kind of keep an eye out for?
Sure. So this semester we have our first play opens next week, actually. The play is American Son. It's directed by Dr. Io Walker, who's in her third year on the faculty here. And it's pretty serious. There's the stage version was on Broadway, is hugely celebrated. There's a Netflix movie version with Kerry Washington in the lead role. But our production, it's in our smaller space. It's in the Lab Theater, so it's an intimate space. And I got to watch rehearsal last night, so you really feel like you're in the middle of this story. And it also deals with police brutality. So there's that thread, this very serious thread that is timely. We're still trying to grapple with police brutality and how it's how it impacts Black and brown bodies. So I'm glad that we're producing this show, but it's serious. So there'll be talkbacks after each performance, so that the audience can have a chance to talk to the actors, to talk to the director, to kind of grapple with the seriousness of the subject matter before they go home.
Yes,
You know, because it's heavy.
It is heavy, yeah.
At the end of March, we have our spring dance concert. So we've got a guest choreographer and then a guest costume designer. So really highlighting the dance program. And then at the end of April will be our musical, and it's a New Brain, which is a newer musical, and it really deals with gender expression, sexuality, and the process of now I've got this new way of thinking and how it's that story is unfolding through the music. So
Right, how do I grapple with that? So yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
so those are our big events. We certainly bring in a lot of guest artists to do workshops and master classes, and those things are always kind of going in the background, as well as our student season. So we have opportunities for students to present their own work. We do a Students Fringe Festival. There's the Jackson Alley Film Festival, which is in collaboration with Department of Communication, Department of Art and Design. So those things are happening at the same time as our big main stage productions.
Wonderful. So many great things to look forward
Oh,
to.
yeah,
Marcus,
yeah.
thank you. And thank you so much for stopping by. Marcus Hayes, and he's again the inaugural winner of the APSU Inclusion Award. And I'm Micca Terrell with 91.9 Public Affairs and APSU-TV.